My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
And indeed it is Judd's Hockey Show. Welcome to another edition, later week edition. Judd, AJ, recording this the day after the Wild suffers a 5-3 loss to the Edmonton Oilers at XL Energy Center, a game for which AJ was in the house, and I was actually watched the national telecast on TNT. A lot to get to off this game, but before we do, just want to remind you today's show is brought to you by the official sports bar, the Sports Dad, and that is the Park Tavern, St. Louis Park, Louisiana Avenue South and Highway 7. It's basically a great time because why? You got great selection of beers, all the games, great food, 2 restaurants. You got bowling. That's not enough. How about this? Trivia now Monday and Wednesday, 7 to 9 p.m. Bingo every Tuesday from 6 to 8. Open 365 days a year. Great times, good fun, good people. Park Tavern again. Highway 7, Louisiana Avenue South in St. Louis Park. All right, AJ, let's get right to it because you were there. I want to start with a goaltending discussion because for a good portion of this season, which is now past the halfway point, Filip Gustavsson was outstanding. Stood on his head, was near the top of the league goaltending leaders in goals against average, in save percentage. Now in his last 4 starts, he is 0-3-0. The one game that's not accounted for was the game that he was actually yanked from against the Blues, I think after giving up 4 goals and replaced by Marc-Andre Fleury. The Wild did rally to win that game, but that win goes to the Flower. And this comes since a 21-save shutout at Carolina, in which he was absolutely outstanding. So 19 goals in his past 4 starts, just for some context. Save percentage is .914 for the season. His save percentage in those past 4 games, .839. How much should we be concerned about him, given the fact that, in fairness, we have to point out that this team is missing, and they weren't for the St. Louis game, the entire game, but right now, no Brodin, no Spurgeon, no Faber.
That's where I don't know about you. I kind of sit on the fence on this talking point because on one hand, I think he's played okay enough, but I think in the past, he's maybe had less chances of where he's had to really bail the team out. Like because of the better defenseman being in the lineup, he's forced to maybe like 3-4 times a night where it's like, okay, you really got to save their bacon. Now it's Zach Bogosian recording like season high ice time, Declan Chisholm season high ice time, John Merrill season high ice time. That just can't happen. Those guys are, I mean, they have to be out there, and I understand that. It's just, it puts Gustafsson in a bad spot because, frankly, he can only do so much. I think his performance, maybe in my eyes, this was a little unexpected. I think we knew he could be good, but this level that he's been at most of the season has kind of blown that away. And it's like, okay, this is, I guess, who you are. Unfortunately, now he's in a spot where it's like, you already had one finger plugging up, the bathtub in this spot. Now you only have so many fingers you can do. And now it's like, well, you need to probably bust those toes out and start plugging up stuff with that. And even then he's only got 10 of those. So you're going to have leaks in certain areas. And I think it's really coming out to play. There's some goals like last night, the McDavid goal. How does he slide that one in?
Well, both of them, right?
Above the shoulder.
Yeah.
It's the smallest, the spot he had to hit, he hit it perfectly. I think every goalie, given like same size, stature, and everything, probably plays that the exact same way. That's just the best player in the world beating you. On the other side of it, though, you have seen goals over that stretch of games where it's like, I kind of expected you to save that one, Gus. Where did that come into play? So I don't know. Am I getting a little more concerned as the game's drawn on? Arguably, yes, just because they keep losing those games when you would assume he should probably keep them in it. Last night, it's a team that's built around offense. Two of the best 5 players in the world are on that team last night. And guess what? They had both, I think, 3 or 4 points respectively. So it's tough to say that last night is like panic button, alarm is out. The defense probably does need to be shored up in front of him, but I think at points he probably does need to be better. And I know that's about not a direct answer in any sense of the word, but I would say, I think we talked about it the other day with Jesse a little bit. I'm maybe more slightly towards panic than I was, but I'm nowhere near like Gus is broken. He's not the same goaltender. I think once you get a couple guys back, even just one defensively, you're going to see some improvement because those big chances are going to be even more limited as to what we see right now.
It's a little bit of a tough one too, because I'm with you. When you're missing that much really good defensive play, it's hard. There were some goals last night. Both of them, you're right, by McDavid. You're not going to stop. There have been some goals though that have been not great. I guess I'm a little bit surprised, and I'm curious now what, if I'm not mistaken, that they've got. Is it back-to-back games this weekend? They play on the road this weekend.
They have a game on the road against the Predators Saturday night, and then they're off until Monday at 2:00 when they're out in Colorado.
Martin Luther King Day. Okay,
yes.
So here's my question: which of those games? And there would have been a time, because there's a day off between them this season where I think Gustavsson starts both games. My question is, which of those games does Marc-Andre Fleury start? Because don't forget that game against the Sharks are sort of a defensive mess themselves. But they're not a bad team. Like
offensively, I think
Celebrini's the real thing, and they've got some offensive firepower. And in the 3-1 win that the Wild got against the Sharks on Saturday in San Jose, Flower was fantastic. So I think it's time to give him at least a little bit more of a shot. I will say this: the one thing that concerns me is with the defense that the Wild is missing and relying on Gus, and the fact that he has 19 goals in 4 games is a lot of goals. I don't want to unnecessarily wear him down or his confidence down, if that makes sense. So I think this is more of a strategic management of, if Fleury, the way that he played against the Sharks, he deserves to play more right now. And I don't know that Filip Gustavsson is benefiting, because you're basically saying, stand on your head with Johnny Merrill playing, with Bogosian playing, and I don't know that is necessarily a fair ask. So I guess where I differ a little bit, like, I'm not concerned about Gus, like, oh my God, but I am a little bit leery of how he's being used. And quite frankly, like, okay, on Saturday in San Jose, Fleury starts, right? And then the next night they play the Golden Knights and Gus starts. And I thought they played a decent, I think it was first, and then they just looked tuckered. We talked about that with Jesse after that. But then last night, was there a case to bring Flower back? Because, I mean,
it's not earlier in the year.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's more, I want to see, does John Hines use both goaltenders a little bit more? Because 19 goals in 4 games, to me, one, yes, they definitely are missing some key guys. 2, it screams to me of being worn down a bit. And 3, I don't know, like, you're not getting what you want. Because basically what you're saying is, hey, you're our top goaltender. Stand on your head because we're without 3 guys. So more so than like concern about a player, I think this is a management thing, a management of the goalies. And it sounds like, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Athletics, Michael Russo had a report that Faber might be back on Saturday. But, once you start to get guys back, it's probably going to normalize things a little bit more, age. But until then, I'm all for sort of spreading the pain out. And if Fleury plays great again, awesome. But I don't think that there's a reason. I don't think this is the time to abuse Gustavsson and say, oh, dude, what happened? How'd McDavid score 2 goals? Well, the Oilers are really good.
And I want to hear what you maybe think, because I think it's going to be really interesting to see what John Hines decides to do here. Because I think you're not going to. I would be surprised, very surprised, if Gustavsson were to start both games this weekend. Because they do have, after that. I say weekend. It's a Monday, but after that Monday game, they're not back in action until Thursday at home hosting Utah, which feels like the 10th time they've hosted Utah this season. But
it's not. But they played them. They've played them twice.
Feels like they've played them so much. In my mind, you can look at it one of 2 ways. I think the Predators are the easier matchup. They are the lesser team. They are what should be a confidence builder. The next game on Monday, Avalanche. They're on your heels points wise. They're the better team. Probably more of a rivalry there. If you start Gustavsson Saturday against Nashville, sit him on Monday, I think that says, we want to get your confidence up. But the flip side to that is you start Fleury against the better team. It's like, well, is that sending a message where, we don't trust you in those bigger situations? We're realizing that now, and this is where you got to think like goalie wise, they're
Right.
overanalyzing. They're sitting there in their house, their apartment, like, okay, coach doesn't think I can do. And I think Gustavsson has probably shown this season that I can rely on him to be more of a professional and not keep that stuff in mind. But that's a lot of minutes, hours, days to just kind of think on that type of decision. Maybe I'm overthinking it. What are your thoughts?
I split them, and look, this it's not a skid completely, but the Wild is 1-3 in its last 4 games, and this started with a 6-1 loss that Gustafsson was in goal for against the Avs at the X. So yeah, I probably start Gustafsson again against Nashville on Saturday, and go to Fleury in the afternoon game at Ball Arena on Monday, and I don't. I think that until and look, if Brock comes back, that's huge.
Yes.
It sounds like Spurgeon is skating again, which is great news. He's still probably a little ways away, but not. It's at least he's on the ice. Brodin's the one I'm concerned about. He's still not close, I guess. And my guess is, since they don't tell us, my guess is he broke his foot. Like I think that slap shot broke his foot because that would be the only reason why he's out. So I would definitely play them both, and I would not have a problem. Like what you're doing here in these past 4 starts for Gus is you're basically confirming he just needs a rest. And he's, I mean, you were there last night. The Oilers, I mean, the Wild took what, a 2-0 lead, and at one point a 3-2 lead. But when you're going against McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, that team, that offense, and the Avs don't have as much, but they've got McKinnon and Rantanen. I don't think I'm going to subject Gustafsson to that again. I think I'm going to try to parse it out a little bit more.
Yeah, and last night honestly was I think a really fun hockey game. Like despite
It was
the
fun
loss,
to watch.
for those in attendance, I think the price of admission was worth it because it was very open hockey. Both teams 30 plus shots, I want to say, at the end of the night. Multiple power play goals. I mean, you saw it would have been nice to have Kaprizov in the mix because then you have the 2 best 97s, some of the best players in the world on the ice, but you just get the one with Connor McDavid, and boy did he lighted things up. And I was shocked kind of how much Edmonton did spread out minutes because obviously McDavid, he got to 21:38 according to moneypuck.com. Draisaitl got up to 20, but then you have like Zach Hyman 17, Connor Brown 15, Vasily Podkolzin 15. They rely on their top guys, but it's very interesting how much they spread things out. When you look at what the Avalanche are going to do, they more workhorse it with McKinnon, with Cale Makar on the blue line, with Mikko Rantanen, and those guys are going to be, given what the Wild's defensive setup is right now, probably going to go to work and have a lot of fun doing so because they can just outmuscle a Bogosian. They can pass around a John Merrill. Just because, frankly, they are better players than those guys. So it'll be really interesting to see. Brock Faber coming back here soon would be a massive, massive bolster for reinforcements. And yeah, I think you're right with, unfortunately, with Brodin, because the way that he took that shot off the side of the foot, if they're not giving an immediate update that's like, yeah, he just got rattled a little bit.
It's bruised, right?
Yeah, it sounds like, I would assume, worse than better.
Yes. So my guess is now, just with the timetable of guys skating and stuff, my guess is now Faber comes back very soon. Spurgeon comes back next. Brodin comes back. And there's a whole debate about, or a whole conversation to be had about, I think Brodin should stay home. Don't go play for Sweden. Look, the 4 nations is awesome, but I'm very curious, when are we going to see those, like not the preliminary or the initial ones for the rosters? We've seen those, but when are we going to see the finalized ones? Because there's got to be some guys who drop out, who drop off, and Brodin should not play. So let's talk about, we talked about the McDavid goals, and you're right. That second one was ridiculous. There's about 4 guys in the world possibly. I think Draisaitl could score it too, and so they've got
Yes.
2 on
Yeah.
the same team. But that was a ridiculous goal. But let's talk about the chicken wing, the elbow to Marcus Johansson. Now, I will say this in defense of the officials, as mad as the Wild were about this. In defense of the officials, when you watched it at real speed on TV, TNT, so like we're talking plenty of cameras, plenty of at real speed, you didn't see it. Like Johansson went down and it's like, what happened there? And you did not see it. Now, when they slowed it down, the chicken wing, because McDavid didn't, it's not like he extended and like thrust upward. It was very subtle. It was dangerous too. And the reports are that, not surprisingly, Johansson has a concussion. The problem is he also has a history of concussion problems throughout his career, which means that he's probably, or not probably, he's more prone to concussions. So, like, if he had never had one before, what happened last night might not concuss him, but he's going to miss time now, placed on the IR today. So, what was your opinion after watching that live and then on the replay in the arena of that play from a guy who I don't ever recall being known as being anything close to dirty?
No. People might not like this either, but I was there. I wasn't spitting distance, but I was, I think, relatively close to that play. It looked just like, maybe they kind of grazed each other and he went down and I was like, oh, he got, something, because he obviously went high, but it was like maybe he got caught in the throat. It kind of just cut off breathing for a second or something like that. They didn't really show that great of a replay until maybe a few minutes later when I was like, I'm going to have to see it again still. In real time, like I don't blame the refs. That being said, on the slow motion, yeah, it's not a good look for Connor McDavid. Mm-mm. And I want to preface, I'm not defending him here because I do think it was a bad move all around. I think the night before, 2 nights prior, he got slew-footed and taken out, not similar to what Jared Spurgeon had happened to him on New Year's Eve,
I saw
but
this, yeah.
in a somewhat similar manner against the Kings, I want to say. Yeah. $5,000 fine. I'm sure he's like, well, if they're not going to really look out for me, I'm going to this. And once again, this is really, really bad to say, but he's, thinking I got to defend myself. If I'm going to get licks, I'm going to give some out too. But there was no hearing. There was no nothing based on the like we have it on video, and maybe explain to me, NHL player safety. What are you seeing or not seeing that I think I am seeing? Because it looks like on slow motion, he looks like he's going by him. He's obviously a good enough player to have the surroundings of, okay, there's a player right here.
Yeah,
and then you see the arm come out.
Yeah.
Like what is your rationale as to why there's nothing? That being said, I concussions are terrible. So you're right. It does kind of like, you're more preemptive to have them, I think is the correct phrasing there. If you have previous one. Yes. So hopefully Marcus Johansson recovery is quick and everything goes good, because that type of stuff absolutely can like snowball the more and more you get him. So hopefully he's able to come back at some point here in the near future.
Yeah, I was the only thing that surprised me was McDavid certainly does not want to bring guys trying to run him on. Yeah. Like he actually takes a lot of abuse, but like this could have led to more. It did not. Mm-hmm. It 100% did not look like an accident in slow-mo. It looked like he claimed, "Oh man, I'm sorry about that." But I mean, if you watched it slowed down, you could clearly see that there was an intent to, because I'm with you. At first, what I thought was, oh, Johansson's head hit his shoulder, hit McDavid's shoulder.
Yep, I thought like maybe the butt of a stick almost.
And too. The only thing I'll say is, the refs, look, in real time, that would have been very tough. Again, McDavid's so good, so slick, so smooth that, most guys would put their elbow out, like it would be obvious it flew up. With him, it's just like a quick bang. But, let's say that, and there aren't a lot of players who are nearly as smooth as Connor, but let's say that Ryan Hartman had done this and a player went down. I think you at least get a penalty called. Like I get the
taken to jail.
Yeah, well, but I mean, if in real time player X comes up against Hartman and player X collapses to the ice, I think the
I see
arm
what
goes up just out of the, hey, it's Ryan Hartman. It must have been something. But yeah, it was very odd. I remember back in 2009, Age, I was in Pittsburgh to go to cover the Viking Steelers game, and the Saturday night, I went to the Penguins Devils game at the old Igloo, and it was the first time I had watched Sidney Crosby really closely, and like I watched him the whole game because he's a great player. And I remember thinking he's not dirty, but he was but he pushed it. Like he was slashing guys behind the play. Like this was no great player who had an aspiration of someday capturing the the Bing Trophy. So all of that being said, I've never realized that or seen that from Connor. So it did actually surprise me. But I'm curious now, what's the move too? And of course, the salary cap has a ton of implications here. The Wild trying to make some moves today. As I said, Johansson goes on the IR, but is the move Ogren comes up? Is the move, because they can only bring, they got so many guys out now, which is unfortunate. But I mean, this is Johansson, although I think we all agree he's not a great player, but he holds a pretty important space in the Wild depth chart. So my question is, it sounds like Lauko was close to returning, but he's a third at best.
I think
Probably a fourth line guy.
I think they activated him today officially.
But I mean, but who's going to go if Ogren's not called up from Iowa, who is going to play the wing on, the second line now or third line, whatever they're calling it?
I have no idea. I would like to think Liam Ogren is the easiest 1-for-1 swap here. In money wise, in my head, I don't.
That's my question.
I don't see why that
the money.
Yeah, and frankly, I feel like they have too sometimes, given some of the moves they make.
Yeah,
but they did. In my head, I would think he can't be making enough to where that move is impossible. If they can't do it in like a, I'm trying. I think it's Ryan Hartman that probably moves up to that second line
who's been on. So that they shuffled that line after the Sharks game, or those lines, and they put Eriksson Ek with, was it Hartman and Foligno?
Yes,
and then Goudreau took on whoever was with Eriksson Ek, if I'm not mistaken. So, but the point is Lauko now plugged into that wing possibly? I mean, it is possible. It's less than ideal, but it is possible. I do get the idea that they are very content in a lot of ways with allowing Ogren to star down there. Like he has been named, I think, to the All-Star team, right? So there does seem to be, and that's sort of where this season's weird. They've overachieved by a ton. They're still in second place in the Central, a point up on Dallas, which, by the way, plays the Canadiens tonight. So that there's a chance that by the time the night is done, the Wild's in third place. But it's really odd because I also think they definitely are still putting a premium on developing players for next year. But like it doesn't, and I actually appreciate this. It doesn't feel like they're trying to rush things like, oh my God, we're better than we thought. Let's rush things. Let's rush guys, right? So I guess my question at the end of the day is like, what is the intention here? And I'm not criticizing them.
No,
but
it's a good question.
Yeah. But I mean, if they say, hey, you know what? Ogren could come up and score some goals, but at the end, but the reality is this, he is better off in Des Moines. Okay. I can, I can hack that because next year is a reset salary cap wise. Like there's a lot of things, and I know that the franchise feels this way. There's a lot of things to like about that. But, and look, I think they're a playoff team now. Like that hot start, I think they're definitely a playoff team. But I don't know that they are going to be willing to sell out. Like, I don't know that you're going to see a deadline move that's like, oh, they traded a couple of prospects. And there are guys out there. But the price of poker, AJ, for instance, for Brock Nelson, a local kid, a Minnesota kid with the Islanders, a guy that can play second line center. He would be a nice addition. I believe he's in the last year of his contract. But the reality is, I think in some years you'd probably pursue that. I don't know that this is a year that Bill Guerin and company would pursue that, and I don't know I blame them for that.
Yeah, and depending on the move that they do to replace Johansson, if it's not Ogren, and like you said, they're contempt, and this is a point that Jesse has brought up on the show, I think, multiple times, which is you don't want, and we've seen this, I think most recently last year, they kind of left Iowa hanging out to dry, just plucking their best players because it's like, we're struck. I think they're very contempt with let Iowa kind of do their thing. I think it's probably not killing them inside, but I think they're frustrated to a certain extent that like David Jiricek is up here playing with the Wild right now based on what we've kind of seen. And I don't think he's been bad. I don't think he's been good, but you can tell like he needs probably that time. And I bet you they feel similarly to what Ogren is probably doing down there right now. You got to get that confidence. And plus like situational mentality coming in for a fresh season, big expectations. You want to prove that, hey, you belong here. You earned your spot on the roster rather than I'm just filling in. And then maybe I play good. Somebody
and you don't play
back.
as much.
That too. Yeah.
Like
you're
exactly
not getting
right.
the minutes wise.
Right.
That in your point, exactly. I think come the deadline, like I know we've joked and me especially talking about maybe Ryan O'Reilly, go get him. Yeah. I think this is going to be quiet at the trade deadline. There might be like a depth thing unless you just wipe a wand away and all of a sudden everybody's 100% healthy and they look like the team. I don't see a way, especially given that they traded their first rounder, a move they make that is like blockbuster, like heading into the playoffs. We are the Minnesota Wild. Like, I think it's going to be, timid at best.
And it's an interesting scenario that they traded their first rounder to Columbus for Jiricek with clearly a plan that he was a starting in 2025-26 guy. Mm-hmm. So like, I think the blueprint, I think the map is pretty clear. Now you might get some pushback from fans who are like, oh, you got off to a great start. Why wouldn't you pursue a cup? But Age, we've seen this before where you go out and get three guys. And I just don't think that this is the season yet. And I think that if you pumped them full of truth serum, my guess is John Hines and management would admit surprise. Like, I think it's Vikings like the Vikings didn't go into the season expecting to win 14 games, right?
Yeah.
Like they always think that they're going to be better than the general public that thinks that, they stink. But I think that in some ways it's Vikings like, and I think if you hold your assets and you basically go into July 1st of next year with the goal of signing Kaprizov long-term and signing a free agent or two, because you now will have, sufficient cap space. And then Wallstedt's going to be the goaltender. Fleury is retired. Gustafsson, you're going to have to see. Like, I'm not quite sure yet, but I think that that's the plan. And I think that they privately, probably in Bill Guerin's drawer, if there is a window, hey, the window is going to be thrust open. I think it's next season. This season is good experience, and you've got some players playing well. But I don't see this as like right now, oh my God, we're struggling. Like John Hines has been very deliberate in most of his comments to really reinforce, like last night. We played well. It's too bad we didn't win. I felt like our guys, like it's almost like this is a year where he's trying to build that culture and confidence back up with the thought process that it probably pays off starting next season.
Yeah, I'm sure Bill Guerin would not give this thought like the time of day just because, and this is why you and I are shooting the breeze here. They probably are. This is a happy accident. Like they are like, hey, we didn't really expect this. I'm sure they wouldn't admit that because if you ask, it'll be the PR of, we always knew we were this good of a team. But I mean, look at some of the comments that you and I have gone down to the locker room and we've heard where it's like, we thought we were better than what we were maybe talking about, but they're like, yeah, we jumped out to a start that maybe wasn't expected by everybody in the room here. And you can have that. And that's fine to say, but I don't think that I think it'd be silly to do some sort of major commitment considering how long you've waited to get the Parise Suter buyouts off the books. And it's not off the books completely, but it is such a big dip off where now it's like, it's $1 million and like 3/4, I think. That's
It's
manageable. That's fine. That like what you have left is like a third string goaltender who fluctuates between Iowa and the Wild. That is going to set them up where next season it's really starting to kick off. It would be, I think, and I think they know this too, based on the 5-year plan or whatever they had talked about and alluded to previously. It would be so silly to say, you know what? We had an anomaly. Let's throw that big orchestrated whiteboard of a plan, kick it outside of the dumpster, kick it out on Kellogg. We don't need it anymore. Let's go all in right now for this one season, despite having half the roster healthy. It would be silly to do so. And I know people listening that are, that wanted to win now always, Craig Leopold probably doesn't like that type of thought process either in an extent, but that is how teams win continually, not just one flash in the pan. And then it's like, now let's sink back into the shadows. Yeah. And, hey, we're getting another draft.
And if their luck changes, like if and when, and he'll come back eventually, but, it sounds like Kaprizov is not going to play on this trip again. So I think at that point in time, we're going to be up to 12 or 13 games missed, which is a lot of games. But if Kaprizov comes back and stays back, that seems like an if now. If Brodin comes back and stays back, that's definitely an if. Spurgeon, same thing. Faber, you can still win. But like what we're saying is, I don't know that this is the year to just say, okay, let's make that trade for a center now. I mean, we've certainly had years where that seemed to be the logical thing. But I'm with you on, you're going to have such an influx of cap space. Why would you want to tie that up on we might be able to make a run and we're not quite sure? A couple more things to get to.
Yeah, really quick here too. Sure. Because I know somebody is right now, they're listening to this and they're typing in the comment section like, but they have to convince Kaprizov to stay. I think he's already convinced. I think based on what we've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you saw, the roster is essentially the same from last season, and you saw them be healthy. That shows Bill Guerin, John Hines, Craig Leopold, they know what they're doing. It's just this injury bug you can't foresee. You cannot plan for something like that, especially given what their cap situation is.
Right.
That start mixed with how they've held up in games without him. Yeah. Obviously, you'd expect they win more, but I think they've looked fine enough without him to where they're planning to offer him longer and probably about the same, if not more money than anybody else. It would be, I'm not going to say silly because it's the NHL and I'm never going to be able to be in his shoes, but I think they've done enough to convince him to where however the season plays out now, barring losing every single game the rest of the year, I think is enough. I think they've already convinced him that this is probably the place for him to stay, unless there's some major falling out behind the scenes that we don't know about it.
Yeah, unless he has decided, and there is zero indication that he's not going to stay. If he needed to see that the team was on the right track, I mean, I think they are, knock on wood, going to be a playoff team. They got off to a great start. Kaprizov was playing great. And what's funny is the recent struggles are really far more of the defensemen, like 3 defensemen, being out. They were something like 4-1 without Kirill, but then Faber gets hurt, Brodin gets hurt, Spurgeon gets hurt, and you can't withstand that. But I don't think the Wild has done anything, because the concern was that they were going to stink.
Yes.
So I don't think that they have done a thing to like make him say, oh boy. And the other nice thing is, one, that they definitely plan on trying to add when free agency starts in July, and 2, even with the current depth chart, you now have 2 centers that can play. Yeah. Rossi's good. I mean, Marco Rossi, let's not sleep on that year. And he's a restricted free agent after the season, but he has to come back as well. I ain't, that kid's tough as nails. I ain't trading him. And Eck is Eck. So I think, to your point, there's a lot to like there. A couple more things to get to before we close the show. But before we do, I want to talk to you about, I told you about the official sports bar, the Sports Dad. Let's talk about the official beer of the Sports Dad, and that is Padres, of course. Absolutely outstanding. I've been telling you for months now about their red. Red ale is fantastic. They've got a porter that's great. English IPA, English Pale Ale. I could go down the list, but what I'm going to tell you is Padraig's available now all over the place. Lunds and Byerly's, Kowalski's, Haskell's, Hy-Vee, Total Wine, Cub, MGM, as well as most independent liquor stores in the greater Metro and Rochester area. Padraig's, give them a try. And before you drink it too, when you crack it open, take a picture and tweet me at jzolgad at Score North. Always love to see the pictures of people enjoying fine beers, and Padraig's qualifies as a very fine beer. Matthew Boldy last night, the start too, and I looked it up. I think he played 26 minutes plus, if I am not mistaken. In fact, I've got it right here. He played 26:55 time on ice. He's a forward. 26:55 last night. But those first two goals and that goal that he scored where he went to the net on Calvin Pickard, who played a great game eventually. But that's what I want. I mean, how great was that play? And that's what power forwards do. Like, that goal was eureka, dude. And he's not going to be that good every night, but there is somewhere between how he played last night and that recent stretch where he sort of disappeared. It's why I get so frustrated, because what we saw last night and early in the season as well, Age, from Boldy, that is an all-star player right there.
Yeah, that 26:55 was a career high for Matt Boldy. Maybe it's just because we're just kind of getting out of the holiday season. I don't know if you have or not seen the movie Elf, but like that Miles Finch character, when he's talking about, like, I have a couple stories, but there's one that's just like, you think, and it's like, yes, that was Matt Boldy last night for me. Like, he brought it from the get-go, and maybe a power play goal in the first 2 minutes helps, but he shows off the skill with, like, the quick pivot, puck movement, but the power, the powerful strides, driving in from the top of the zone, shaking off a guy, cutting to the middle, saying, you know what, I don't need to shy away from this. I might take a bump and a bruise here, but I'm getting to the front of the net for a scoring chance, and it pays off. And then, I mean, he shows the pass later on the Marco Rossi goal on the power play as well. I mean, he was engaged. Like, that is exactly the Matt Boldy that we want to see, and we could see and can and should see every single night. At a certain point, I'm not going to be able to use the excuse that he is a young kid who's still, probably trying to find that consistency level in his game.
Yeah,
I'm going to use it one more time right now while he still is,
okay, I think,
23. This is it.
He's been around long enough to know that there is like he's not going to be that good all the time, but there is no.
But there's a difference between trying every shift and taking shifts off
and disappearing.
Yes, exactly. Last night he was very much present in the building at the XL Energy Center. There's no reason we can't see a version of that every single night. And yeah, he was all-star last night. Yeah. I don't need to see that exact level, but you could tell that he showed up purposeful. Like, he was like, I'm driving this game. I'm controlling this as much as I can.
He drove the line, yeah.
Yes. And maybe he was like, okay, we're playing against McDavid, Draisaitl. I have to rise to the occasion.
National TV.
You know what? You wonder, is he a big game guy? Are we going to see like an otherworldly Matt Boldy at
He's
the
a big fan of Biz.
Face-off? Oh God, he must be. They got to get him on Chicklets. We got to get him on here. Why not? Little
Boldy?
JHS bump.
Yeah, I don't know how much he would say to us. I think he's a pretty bland kid. Now, he might be great on Chicklets. The last thing is, this team is now, even after the loss to the Golden Knights on Sunday, this team is now 16-4-3 on the road. They are now 11-10-1 at home. In other words, in real life, they are a 500 team. 11-10-1. They're 11-11, of course. Make sense of it for me. I can't. I'll ask this every show. Make sense of this for me.
I can't. And I mean, part of it maybe is just like at certain times when they're on the road, maybe they're healthier, and they were healthier for that stretch at the beginning of the year. Whereas right now you come back and now you're dealing with more injuries, and because of that, you're probably going to lose more games. But it's so weird. Like, if you could tell me right now that, like, I could flop those two and we could say how they're a 500 team on the road, does your perspective then change? Like,
Yes.
I can deal with a 500 team on the road if they're
Yeah, I
winning that
wouldn't be
much at
shocked.
home.
I
I
wouldn't be
wouldn't be
shocked at all.
shocked either, and I'd be pretty content with it. But the fact that they're performing so well, and you see the number on a piece of paper that they're 16, 4 and what'd you say, 3 on the road?
Yeah.
Yeah,
16,
it's
4, and 3.
it's crazy. I can't. You've asked me again. I can't give you like a good rational answer other than maybe just timing, maybe just health. Opponent wise, I need to look it up. Like strength of schedule so far on the road versus at home. Have they played better teams at home? I don't think so.
They
I feel
beat
like
the Oilers there. They were blown out, if I'm not mistaken, by the Oilers at the X in their first meeting this season.
yeah.
They weren't blown out last night, but they've also been shellacked at home by the Avalanche, by the Kings.
The Stars got them at home in a closer game. I feel like
Closer
than they
game
got
in
them on
that-
the road.
And that was with somebody who was hurt. They had a couple guys out. I think Brodeen was out for that game as well.
Was Eck out for that game too?
He might have been. But I mean, just for context here. So, of the top 6 teams in the Western Conference, the Jets, who are unbelievable, are 17, 4, and 3 at home. The Dallas Stars are 16, 5, and 1 at home. The Vegas Golden Knights, 18, 6, and 0. The Oilers, 15, 7, and 1. The Kings, 14, 2, and 1. So, like every other one of these teams is pretty much dominant at home, which again does not surprise you one bit. The other interesting thing when you look at the top 6 teams in the Western Conference in the divisions is this: the Jets, an NHL best plus 53 goal differential. The Dallas Stars plus 35. The Golden Knights plus 32. The Oilers plus 25. The Kings plus 21. Even the Avalanche, who are the first wild card team in, plus 10. The Wild plus 8. That might scream a little bit 2022 Vikings point differential.
I mean, let's look at some of the most recent losses here. Because
I've
you
got
do
the last 4 games.
and that's the thing. Like it's a
6-1, 6-1, 4-1, 5-3, and then sandwiched in there is the Sharks game, which they won 3-1. And Fleury played great, stood on his head. They should have lost that. They'd lose that game if Fleury does not have probably his best game of the season.
Yeah. God, you're right. It's fun. It's
Toronto,
so funny.
Plus 8. So like, there's some weird things.
Because and it's so funny that you can just draw like you'd think, given different structures, given different rosters and totally different leagues, like there would be no similarities, if any, between the Wild and the Vikings. But yeah, it's so weird how you can look that season. It was a team that was just very lucky, very fortunate at the end of the day. Is that the Wild right now? I don't know. We'll have to see because there's still about half a season left, and I think they are
back.
Yeah, they're going to get guys back, and I think that's the big thing here. So like they're going to get juggernauts back. It's not like they're missing. And I know they're getting back. I feel bad picking on the guy, but like Jacob Lauko is not going to like elevate this team to a completely different.
He doesn't belong on the list. And he's been really good.
Yes,
like he's been a nice addition.
But I think he'd admit like I'm not in the club.
Yeah, but when they throw up that list on the Chiron on TV, and it's like the Wild Knights without Kaprizov, Brodeen is out, Faber, Spurgeon, and Lauko. It's like one of these things is not like the other, baby.
I need them to make like the font on his needs to be a little bit smaller. It's like these guys, and then like
also missing.
He's there. Also,
it's like starring the Wild, starring, and then like key grip,
man with blue hat,
Jakob Lauko.
And then it's spelled wrong.
Extras.
It's Jacob with a C and not the K or whatever. Yeah.
All right, we are done here. Back soon, I'm sure, as H said, the Wild plays again on Saturday against the Predators, and then Monday afternoon on Martin Luther King Day against the Avs in Colorado. Judd's Hockey Show. We'll talk to you soon.